this is the one that takes the most. Okay, and just, you know, when Dennis was talking about the cost of the value of a bushel of beans, when we say between 5 and 6 bushel on average, if you've got susceptible beans being grown in an infested field, that's about how much you're losing versus if you grow a resistant variety. So just out of curiosity, how many of you know you have cyst nematode? Too many. We got a few. Well, hopefully after tonight, if you haven't checked your fields, or if you have and you haven't found it, that's great. Okay, but if you haven't looked for it, this is one to look for, and we'll show you how to do that. And you can take some bags home with you tonight that we'll process those and let you know if you have cyst nematode or not. But really, with that, you know, we say 25 million. It's really over that. It's over 30 million if we use current math with that 5-6 bushel number. And that's just for Nebraska when we look at loss, potential loss revenue that way. You know, nationally, it's a much bigger number than that. That's just our state. So again, the one that is taken the most when we look across the whole U.S. and Nebraska, and really from 2005 to 2010, this map, I'm always hesitant to put up a map, right? Because it says these blue spots are where cyst nematode is, you know, and you look on here and, you know, you'll find Seward County and it's got a red dot in it. Well, the red dot means this was identified through the sample program that was funded through your checkoff. But that's where the first sample came from, was with that program. And with that, really, we've had 25 new counties, all the red dots, with that awareness campaign, really. And just finding fields that growers didn't know they had cyst nematode. And the reason we know they didn't know they had it is that when we get a sample and we process it, we'll talk about populations and numbers tonight a little bit. When we take a sample, we'll process a volume of soil that's equivalent to about half of one of those styrofoam coffee cups that you're used to seeing. Okay, and that's
the little one, the regular one, not the jumbo.
Yeah, be clear on that. The little one, yeah, everything's getting bigger, right? So you got those old time, little small styrofoam cups. We take about half of that. It's 100 cc's of soil. And what we'll see in that typically in most of our fields would be, you know, 1,000 or less in a field that's been managed for cyst nematode. When we see areas that have been growing susceptible beans without knowledge if there's cyst there, we may see 30,000, we may see 60,000. We've seen 134 or 6,000, okay, in that small volume of soil. And that's how many eggs of the nematode we'll see in that volume of soil. So that's what we're trying to avoid when we talk about, you know, with the sampling, if you know it's there or not. And again, this is where it's at, but it's very site specific. So all these counties that you see lighted up, that doesn't mean everybody has it. You know, we've got it in this field. It may not be in the field across the road, okay? Because there's a creek running through here, there's a real good chance, but we don't know for sure. So it's very, very site specific.
I'd just like to point out that this really emphasizes the importance of sampling. That in that 6-year period, we found 25 new counties. In the 19 years prior to that, when we didn't have the sampling program that the Soybean Board has promoted, that in 19 years before that, we found 27 counties. So we've almost doubled the number in 6 years, and that's just because more folks were going out and checking their fields. And that's probably the hardest thing to get folks to do, but it's probably the most important part. Just find out what's out there.
Yeah, and it's really not that has moved that much in just a short amount of time. It's just really detection a lot of times. So just awareness and detection. And when we talk about eggs, this is what we're talking about. And you'll be able to look at them in the microscope tonight if you want to see them. Kyle has some things set up over here where you can see the cyst and you can see the eggs inside. And those eggs hatch and turn into these small juvenile. Inside here is just a little juvenile nematode that's just an immature that's wrapped up in that little case. And when we have soybeans grown in the field, they'll release a chemical cue to that egg that it'll hatch. And that nematode will migrate over to the root system and start feeding. And these little pink lines in here, these are just stained nematodes inside of a root hair of a soybean plant. Okay, so they're starting to feed. You see these little dark spots at the tips. That's where that soybean plant has become modified to where those cells in that root system are feeding cell sites. And when that nematode forms that feeding cell site, then that flow of nutrients flows into there and feeds that nematode. And if it's a female, it'll stay attached there, and the males will feed for a little bit, and then they'll come outside, fertilize the females, and then that female will fill with eggs from that location or up through the root, and that's the cyst that you see, is the actual female nematode's body full of eggs. And there may be 300-400 eggs in one of those cysts. Okay? And this cycle will take about 30 days. Okay? And when we look at that, if we've got resistance, we'll talk about resistant varieties tonight. One of the ways resistance can work is when that nematode comes in here and starts feeding, that interaction, that it sticks, it's got a little thing called a stylet, a little needle. It sticks inside that cell. And it just folds, the outside of that cell just kind of folds in, and that nematode sticks its stylet in there, and nutrients start to flow into that, and that's how it feeds. Okay? It doesn't really pierce it like a needle. It just kind of sticks in. There's a membrane around there. All that, the nutrition for that nematode comes through. So there's a lot of biochemical cues that go back and forth in that interaction. In resistance, that doesn't work maybe. It's one way. So that'll break that, and it won't be able to feed. So at this point, it'll stop. Nematode will die. Now when we talk about resistance, and John will talk to you also about rotation of resistant varieties, when we're looking at that, we'll see differences in that if we were all soybean cyst nematode and we had a big soybean plant out here and we all went to feed, maybe 4 of you would be able to reproduce whether it was resistant or not. Okay? So when we say resistance, it's not 100% for everything. Some component of the number of eggs out there will be able to reproduce and continue. So that's why rotation, and we'll talk through this some more, but that's what really cues in on that. Now one thing with cyst nematode is that when you identify it somewhere, it's something you always have to manage. You know, so there's nothing that we can do here to this field that's going to eliminate the nematode from being here. But if you take the right steps, it is very manageable. And I think the numbers here, you know, in Don's field were around 2,000. Very manageable numbers. Okay.